64% of Americans, nearly 2 out of every 3 people, say they are more afraid of running out of money in retirement than they are of dying. Let that sit for a second. Because that is not a fear of cancer, not a fear of a car accident, not a fear of a terminal diagnosis. It is a fear of an empty bank account, outlasting a heartbeat. Once you understand what is actually happening out there, that fear makes complete sense. Because the numbers behind it are brutal in a way that is hard to fully absorb until you see them laid out together. This is not a fringe problem, and it is not about people who blew their savings on bad decisions, or didn't try hard enough. What we are dealing with is a slow, motion structural collapse that spent decades building quietly in the background. And it is arriving right now. In 2026, experts have started calling this the retirement crisis generation, and the part that should genuinely alarm you is that most people have no idea how deep the trouble actually runs. Today, we're going through the real numbers, the real causes, why the system that was supposed to catch you is quietly coming apart, and what you can actually do about it before the window closes, because that window is closing faster than most people realize. Stay with me. This is one of the most important conversations you'll have all year. Start with the cold, hard math. Because when you lay it all out together, the numbers are genuinely shocking. According to Clever's 2026 retirement survey, the average retiree in America has saved approximately $288,700. While that same group of retirees says you need around $823,800 to retire comfortably, a gap of over $500,000. And that is just the average. Averages always get dragged upward by the people at the top, which means the real picture is worse. The Federal Reserve's most recent data puts median retirement savings for American families at just $87,000. And that number is worth sitting with, because at a 4% withdrawal rate, the standard financial planning benchmark, $87,000 generates roughly $290 a month. You cannot pay rent on that in most American cities. You cannot survive on it, and the target keeps moving. A new figure emerged from the 2025 US retirement survey. People now say they need between $1.26 and $1.28 million to retire comfortably in today's dollars. The gap between what people have and what they need has never been wider than it is right now. Here is something that gets glossed over constantly, and it matters enormously. Record numbers of people are raiding their retirement accounts just to stay afloat today. Not in retirement, but right now, while they were still working. Vanguard's 2025 data shows that 6% of 401k participants took a hardship withdrawal that year, which marks the 6th consecutive year of increases and puts the rate at triple what it was before the pandemic. People aren't saving for retirement. They're retreating their 401k as emergency funds because they have no other option. Fidelity's data shows the average 401k balance at the end of 2025, sitting at $146,400. But that average hides the real story. Gen X workers, the generation closest to retirement right now, average around $192,300, which sounds possible until you remember they need over $1 million, making that balance a fraction of what is actually required. Among people 50 and older, RPS early 2026 data found that 18% have zero saved for retirement, and these are people with 10 to 15 years left before they have to stop working. Starting from nothing, 1 in 4 full-time workers actually cut their retirement contribution rate in 2025. According to a CBS News report from March 2026, not held it flat, not increased it, but cut it. Because groceries cost more, rent climbed higher, and retirement felt like a tomorrow problem. The trouble with tomorrow problems is that tomorrow has a relentless way of becoming today. The Social Security time bomb, Washington doesn't advertise this loudly enough. But the Social Security Trust Fund is now projected to be depleted by 2033. Not eliminated, not gone forever, but depleted to the point where the system can only pay out roughly 77 cents for every dollar of promised benefits. Congress doing nothing, which carries a well-documented track record as a historical pattern, would mean every Social Security recipient in America faces an automatic 23% benefit cut starting in 2033. That is 7 years from now. The Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget put out projections that go even darker, suggesting insolvency could arrive as early as 2032, triggering 24% across the board cuts affecting 62 million Americans at the same time. None of that would matter quite so much if Social Security were just a supplement. But over 52% of Americans who haven't retired yet expect it to be their primary source of income in retirement. The average Social Security retirement benefit in 2026 runs roughly $1,900 a month, about $22,800 a year, which falls below the poverty line for a couple in most of the country. A 23% cut on top of that is a financial catastrophe for tens of millions of people who have built no backup plan. The system was designed to supplement savings and pensions, not replace them entirely, but pensions evaporated over the last 30 years. Savings rates have cratered, and Social Security is now being counted on to carry weight it was never built to hold. The healthcare cost nobody plans for, this is the one that blindsides people, and the damage it does is absolute. Fidelity's latest projections show a healthy couple retiring at 65 in 2026 can expect to spend between $315,000 and $400,000 on healthcare over their retirement, and that is for a healthy couple. Chronic conditions push those numbers far higher. HealthView Services released 2026 data showing that national average lifetime premiums for traditional Medicare options are projected at $688,996 for a healthy 65-year-old couple. And when you fold in deductibles, copays, hearing, vision, and dental costs, the US healthcare system conveniently doesn't cover. The total climbs to nearly $955,411, close to $1 million, just for healthcare. In retirement, healthcare costs are rising at approximately 5.8% per year in retirement. According to HealthView's data, which is almost double the general inflation rate, and 2026 projections put the annual increase between 6.5% and over 10% depending on plan type. That curve alone can outrun a retirement portfolio over 20 to 30 years. And most retirement calculators don't adequately account for it. This is one of the single biggest reasons people find themselves broke in their 70s and 80s. The years when they can least afford it and are least able to return to work. The demographic pressure crushing the system. In 2025, a record-setting 4.2 million Americans turned 65. A trend continuing through 2026 and into 2027, with an average of 11,400 Americans reaching retirement age every single day right now. Demographers call this peak 65. The largest cohort of Americans ever to enter retirement simultaneously, and the system wasn't built for this volume. Social Security wasn't designed for it. Medicare wasn't designed for it. And the labor market adjustments simply haven't been made. What that means on the ground is more pressure on Social Security outflows, spiking healthcare demand, and a worker to retiree ratio that gets worse every year. Back in 1960, roughly 5 workers supported each Social Security recipient. Today that number sits closer to 2.7, and some projections show it dropping below 2 by the mid-2030s. The math doesn't hold together unless something changes. And the only options on the table are benefit cuts, tax increases, or a higher retirement age, none of which come without serious pain. What this looks like as an actual human life. Statistics are one thing, but what they mean in real human terms deserves a moment. Over 35 million Americans have no savings and no pension. People who will reach retirement age with nothing in the bank and no guaranteed income beyond whatever Social Security pays out. Strip away the averages and the optimistic projections, and what you are left with is a 68-year-old woman in a mid-sized American city surviving on $1,600 a month, choosing between medication and food, unable to move to a safer neighborhood, leaning on family members who are already stretched thin. The National Council on Aging released data in late 2025 showing that over 19 million older adult households, 45%, don't bring in enough income to cover basic living costs. Not vacations, not luxuries, just groceries, rent, utilities, and medications. 45% of older American households are not making ends meet. There is a name for this: elder poverty, and it is spreading fast while remaining largely invisible. Because older Americans tend not to protest in the streets, they tend to quietly struggle. Coming out of retirement, to go back to work. One of the clearest signals that something has gone badly wrong is the growing number of people leaving retirement to re-enter the workforce. Our PAS February 2026 survey found a significant portion of adults, 50 and older, returning to work out of economic necessity. Not because they wanted to, but because the money ran out. They thought they had enough, inflation ate their margins, healthcare costs arrived larger than expected, and suddenly they were back in the labor market in their late 60s and early 70s, competing in an economy that often isn't kind to older workers. Pew Research documented in August 2025 that a growing share of Americans 65 and older are working past the traditional retirement age, driven by poverty pressure rather than personal preference. Business Insider reported in April 2026 that America's definition of retirement age is fundamentally changing because 65 is no longer financially viable for a huge portion of the population. That is not the retirement people spent decades working toward. And the quiet, grinding despair of it is exactly why 64% of Americans tell Allianz they are more afraid of going broke than of dying. Generation X, walking directly into the wall. Gen X, people born between 1965 and 1980, deserve specific attention here, because this generation is bearing the brunt of the collision, and doesn't get nearly enough focus in these conversations. They watched the pension disappear and became the first generation handed entirely over to the 401k system, a structure that requires individual discipline, financial literacy, and consistent contributions across decades of sometimes chaotic financial life. Among Gen Xers, 70% fear running out of money in retirement more than death, the highest figure of any generation surveyed by Allianz in 2026, higher than millennials, higher than boomers. The oldest Gen Xers are already approaching retirement age, and their average 401k balance sits at around $192,000 in a world that requires over $1 million. That gap can be closed by investment returns alone in the time they have left. The math requires dramatic lifestyle downsizing, working well into their 70s, or some combination of both. How the three-legged stool lost two legs. The traditional retirement model rested on what financial planners call the three-legged stool: pension, Social Security, and personal savings, all three working together to produce a stable retirement income. The first leg, pensions, has largely disappeared for private sector workers. The shift from defined benefit plans to 401k has transferred all the investment risk from corporations to individual workers, meaning bad timing, insufficient contributions, or poor investment choices became entirely your problem. Companies saved a fortune in the process, and workers inherited a ticking clock. The second leg, Social Security, is underfunded, politically contentious, and facing structural insolvency within a decade, being leaned on harder than ever precisely because the first leg collapsed. The third leg, personal savings, shows a median balance of $87,000, with a significant portion of the population holding nothing at all. And savings rates actually declined in 2025, as inflation squeezed household budgets. The average full-time worker contributed 8.9% of their paycheck to retirement in 2025, down from 9.2% the year before. What is left is essentially one shaky leg, a social security system headed toward a forced benefit cut, and millions of people trying to balance on it. Why the standard advice isn't reaching everyone. The financial industry doesn't love acknowledging this. But max out your 401k, diversify, and let compound interest work is excellent advice if you start early. If you earn enough to have money left over after expenses, if you are financially literate enough to make good investment decisions, and if the markets cooperate. For the median American earning around $59,000 a year while carrying student debt, potentially a mortgage, raising kids, and absorbing healthcare costs, there often genuinely is margin left to max out anything. And at 50 years old with $30,000 saved, the compound interest math is no longer a friend. That window for easy compounding has already closed. The system was designed for financial discipline inside a world of financial stability. Not a world where housing costs doubled in a decade. Healthcare premiums eat 10, 20, 15% of gross income for many families. And real wages for median earners barely kept pace with inflation over 30 years. The gap between the advice and the reality has never been wider than it is right now. What you can actually do. Starting with the number. The first step, and this is uncomfortable for a lot of people, is stopping the avoidance of the actual number. Log in to every retirement account you have. Add them up. Then pull up the Social Security benefits estimator and get your projected benefit at 62, 67, and 70. Now, you have a real starting point instead of an assumption. Most people skip this step, and the reason is understandable, because a bad number feels worse once you know it. But you cannot fix a problem you refuse to look at. The people who end up broke in retirement are often not the ones who didn't try. They were frequently the ones who assumed it would work out without ever verifying that assumption. If you are in your 30s, time and compound growth are still working in your favor, and a 35-year old investing $500 a month in a diversified index fund at a historical average return of around 7% arrives at roughly $1.2 million by age 65. The key is starting now, rather than waiting for a moment of financial comfort that rarely arrives on its own. You have to manufacture it by deciding that future you takes priority over present convenience. Automate your contributions so the decision gets made for you. And if your employer offers a match, not capturing it means leaving part of your compensation on the table. If you're behind, the catch-up rules matter. The people in this situation feel the most anxiety, and that is understandable. But panic decisions tend to be the most financially damaging. Cashing out retirement accounts, making concentrated bets on speculative assets to catch up, dramatically shifting investment strategies when the market drops. The catch-up contribution rules exist specifically for this window. In 2025 and 2026, anyone 50 or older can contribute up to $30,500 per year to a 401k, which is the standard $23,500 plus a $7,000 catch-up contribution, and you secure 2.0 provision bumps that limit to $34,750 for anyone between 60 and 63. Use it. Beyond contributions, this phase requires getting serious about what your actual cost structure in retirement needs to look like, not penny pinching for its own sake, but genuinely evaluating what you can live well on. Retiring slightly later, even 2 or 3 more years, dramatically improves the outcome for many people. And that is a real lever worth considering seriously. The most underused lever in the entire system. Every year you delay claiming Social Security between age 62 and 70 increases your monthly benefit by approximately 68%. A guaranteed return no market can match. Claiming at 62 versus 70 isn't just an 8-year timing difference. It is potentially a 76% difference in your monthly benefit for the rest of your life. For someone who lives to 85 or 90, which modern medicine makes increasingly common, the total lifetime benefit difference between those two claiming ages can run into hundreds of thousands of dollars. If you are healthy and have other income sources to bridge the gap, delaying Social Security as long as possible is one of the highest return decisions available to you. And this holds true even factoring in the 2033 insolvency projections. Because even after a 23% cut, a larger base benefit still leaves you better off than a smaller one. The healthcare fund. Most people never build a health savings account. If you qualify for one, deserves your immediate attention. An HSA is the only triple tax-advantaged account in the US tax code. Contributions are tax-deductible, growth accumulates tax-free, and withdrawals for qualified medical expenses come out tax-free as well. If you are on a high-deductible health plan, max it out every year and invest those funds rather than spending them down. A 55-year-old who maxes an HSA for the next 10 years before retirement builds a dedicated healthcare fund capable of covering a significant portion of those projected costs. Understanding what Medicare actually covers and what it doesn't is equally critical, because the assumption that Medicare handles everything is one of the most expensive misunderstandings in retirement planning. Part A covers hospitalization, Part B covers outpatient care, Part D covers prescription drugs, but dental, vision, hearing, and long-term care are largely excluded. Medigap or Medicare Advantage plans add cost, but reduce exposure, and this needs to be modeled specifically rather than assumed to be fine. Building multiple income streams. The diversification that matters most at this point in history is just investment diversification. It is income stream diversification. Don't rely entirely on Social Security, and don't rely entirely on a 401k, a Roth IRA alongside a traditional 401k. Gives you tax flexibility in retirement to manage income strategically and potentially reduce your overall tax burden. And some people in the right circumstances find that annuities serve a useful role in building a guaranteed income floor. The people who navigate retirement best tend to have constructed multiple income streams so that no single failure, a market crash, a Social Security cut, an unexpected healthcare expense, can wipe everything out at once. Where this all lands. The retirement crisis is real, not a media exaggeration, and not a niche problem affecting a small, financially irresponsible minority. It is a structural failure built over 40 years. The disappearance of pensions, the stagnation of wages, the explosion of healthcare costs, the gradual underfunding of Social Security, arriving at its peak exactly as the largest retirement cohort in American history walks out the door. 70% of Gen Xers are more afraid of going broke than dying. 64% of all Americans share that fear. 35 million people have no savings and no pension. And the median retirement savings in this country sits at $87,000 in a world requiring over $1 million. Healthcare alone could cost a couple nearly $1 million over their remaining lives. None of this is acceptable, and none of it is inevitable. Not for you individually, not if you're still in the accumulation phase or the early distribution phase, not if you're willing to look at the number honestly and act on it. The window to act isn't infinite, and every year of delay costs you in ways that become increasingly difficult to recover from. The people who end up financially comfortable in retirement aren't always the highest earners. They're almost always the ones who took it seriously early enough, made consistent decisions, even when it was inconvenient, and refused to let the gap between what they had and what they needed become a reason to give up. Don't be a statistic in someone else's video. Do the math on your own situation, make the hard choices while you still can. And if you found this useful, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Because I promise you, there are people in your life who do. I'll see you in the next one.